Marcelo Bielsa, the man-marking madness. Marcelo Bielsa didn't trust zones, he trusted humans. Wherever your designated opponent wandered, you shadowed them like a private investigator tailing a suspect. Position, shape, defensive structure, all secondary to the mission. Follow your man no matter what. Under Bielsa at Leeds, Athletic Bilbao, or Marseille, the pitch stopped resembling a tactical diagram and transformed into a live-action chase sequence. Defenders trailed strikers into midfield. Midfielders drifted after fullbacks into impossible corners. Wingers suddenly found themselves tracking center backs. And the goalkeeper? Half the time, he looked like the lone sheriff trying to restore order in a town overrun by outlaws. The beauty of it was relentless pressure. The downside, one successful dribble could send the entire system collapsing like a folding chair. If an attacker slipped free, he usually found half the pitch empty because Bielsa's man markers had been dragged into another time zone. Bielsa valued work ethic over safety, chaos over comfort, and sometimes pure insanity over conservative logic. It was wild. It was dangerous. It was unmistakably Bielsa. Pep Guardiola, the inverted fullback revolution. Pep Guardiola didn't modify the role of fullbacks, he rewrote their existence. Instead of stretching the touchline and overlapping, he dragged them into midfield and turned the formation into a fluid, living organism. Sometimes a 3-2-5, sometimes a 2-3-5, sometimes something that looked like modern art. At Bayern Munich and Manchester City, players like Philipp Lahm, David Alaba, Alexander Zinchenko, and Joao Cancelo suddenly operated as midfield conductors while still being defenders by name only. They drifted inward, dictated rhythm, created overloads, and solved tactical problems like walking cheat codes. Opponents had no idea how to respond. Press the wingers, fullbacks materialized in midfield. Press the midfield, the backline shapeshifted into new structures. Press everything? Congratulations. Pep now has a free man again. His inverted fullbacks neutralize counterattacks, stabilize buildup, and turn positional play into a labyrinth only his teams could navigate. The twist? Pep originally created the tactic to fix a defensive weakness, and instead revolutionized world football. Antonio Conte, the wingback army. Antonio Conte took a tactic that many believed belonged in the past and weaponized it into title-winning dynamite. His wingbacks at Juventus, Chelsea, and Inter weren't just defenders or midfielders. They were hybrid engines covering two jobs at once. With a back three that expanded into a five-man frontline during attacks, Conte engineered constant width, overlapping pressure, and an onslaught of vertical runs. Victor Moses went from a forgotten winger to a championship workhorse. At Inter, Achraf Hakimi and Ivan Perisic terrorized entire flanks on their own. Conte's blueprint created teams that could bunker like fortresses, yet explode forward like counter-attacking missiles. The structure moved like an accordion, tight and rigid defensively, then stretched and devastating going forward. Wingbacks were supposed to be outdated. Conte turned them into weapons. Jorge Sampaoli, all gas, no brakes. Jorge Sampaoli rejected the idea of balance entirely. His logic was simple: attack at full throttle, and when you're done attacking, attack again. At Chile, Sevilla, and Argentina, his teams pressed with such ferocity that it often looked like the midfield had disappeared into a tornado of red and white shirts. Center backs stepped higher than midfielders. Fullbacks bombed forward like wingers. Wingers collapsed into the box like auxiliary defenders. Everyone sprinted everywhere, all the time. When the system clicked, opponents suffocated under constant pressure, coughing up possession like they were drowning. When it malfunctioned, you saw a defensive chaos that belonged in a comedy reel. Sampaoli engineered teams powered by courage or pure madness, depending on the moment. There were no brakes, only acceleration. Thomas Tuchel, the half-space obsession. Thomas Tuchel doesn't just acknowledge zones, he treats them like sacred scripture. The half space, that slim vertical corridor between the wing and the center, is his tactical holy ground. At Borussia Dortmund, PSG, and Chelsea, Tuchel strategically placed creators, runners, and attackers in these lanes to execute patterns with eerie precision. To an outsider, it may look like players lingering in unusual pockets, but the result? Relentless triangles, constant passing lanes, overloads that crush defensive structures. Tuchel plays football like he's deciphering invisible geometry. By mastering the half spaces, he turns matches into strategic battles where his team always has the upper hand. It's chess disguised as football, and his players move on grids only he perceives. Jose Mourinho parking the bus and winning anyway. Jose Mourinho transformed deep defending into an art form, or a nightmare, depending on which side you're on. His infamous low block sits so deep that his players sometimes spend entire halves defending inside their own box. Opponents keep the ball, Mourinho keeps the advantage. Inter Milan's 2010 Champions League semifinal versus Barcelona is the ultimate case study. 10 men, barely any possession, every player defending like their family fortune was on the line. Barcelona played football, Mourinho played survival, and won. Most coaches fear conceding chances. Mourinho fears losing control, so he removes risk completely and waits for one error, one counter, one moment. It isn't glamorous, it isn't romantic, but it wins, again and again. Johan Cruyff, total football, total freedom. Johan Cruyff despised rigid positions. His philosophy allowed players to rotate, swap roles, and wander with intention. Defenders moved into midfield, midfielders drifted wide, attackers dropped deep. At Barcelona and with the Netherlands, the formation constantly shapeshifted, looking chaotic to the untrained eye, but functioning like a synchronized dance. Movements were dictated by understanding, not rigid orders. Total football made the sport fluid, expressive, unpredictable, alive. It looked strange because it demolished tradition. It was genius because it laid the foundation for the modern game. Without Cruyff, there is no Guardiola, no Xavi, no tiki-taka. Diego Simeone's suffer ball. Diego Simeone coaches football like a general preparing for siege warfare. His teams don't merely defend, they endure. They wait for the opponent to crumble emotionally before they ever break structurally. Atletico Madrid under Simeone press, squeeze, and suffer together. Two ultra-tight lines of four. No gaps, no breathing room. Every duel is a fistfight. Every counterattack is a dagger. Opponents lose patience long before Atletico lose organization. Simeone's football doesn't aim to outplay you, it aims to outlast you. Other teams play football, Simeone's teams survive it, and that is their superpower. Ralf Rangnick, the 8-second rule. Ralf Rangnick revolutionized the game by reducing it to 2 simple timers. Lose the ball, win it back within 8 seconds. Win the ball, shoot within 10. His gegenpressing model transformed German football. At Hoffenheim, Leipzig, and throughout the Red Bull network, his teams pressed with machine-like synchronization. Everything was vertical, fast, merciless. Passes weren't crafted, they were launched. Opponents weren't allowed to breathe. It looked frantic, but the timing was exact. This wasn't possession football, it was coordinated assault, not art, controlled aggression. Louis van Gaal, systems over players. Louis van Gaal values principles above all else. If his system requires someone out of position, he'll put them there without hesitation, as long as they obey the tactical doctrine. In the 2014 World Cup, he used wingers as wingbacks, midfielders as center backs, and defenders as playmakers. Then he unleashed one of the boldest decisions ever, swapping his goalkeeper in the 120th minute solely for a penalty shootout. It worked flawlessly, because in Van Gaal's universe, the system is the true star. Players are strategic pieces, and he moves them with stubborn, brilliant conviction. Zdeněk Zeman, the beautiful, suicidal 4-3-3. Zdeněk Zeman's football is all intensity and fire. His teams attack with numbers that make most managers sweat. At Foggia, Roma, and Lazio, Zeman ball meant lightning-fast wing play, suffocating pressure, and defensive lines positioned dangerously high. Training sessions felt like military boot camps mixed with tactical experiments. Matches frequently ended 4-3, 5-2, 5-4. Pure entertainment, absolute bedlam. Opponents loved facing Zeman because chaos was guaranteed. Fans adored him because goals were inevitable. Zeman didn't care about risk, he cared about joy. Fernando Diniz, Brazilian free jazz. Fernando Diniz tears up tactical rigidity altogether. His approach, relationism, is built on rhythm, intuition, and constant movement. Players roam, swap positions, and improvise based on chemistry instead of strict instruction. At Fluminense, this created football that felt emotional, expressive, almost musical. Triangles multiplied, roles blurred, and sequences flowed like street football broadcast to the world. It ignored every European tactical convention, which is precisely why it succeeded. Diniz ball isn't a formation, it's a vibe. Football tactics don't evolve in straight lines. They zigzag, explode, collapse, and reinvent themselves thanks to bold, eccentric thinkers. And sometimes the strangest ideas reshape the entire sport, because in football, genius and madness usually sit side by side, often on the same touchline.